This is episode 3. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Cole Clark. I'm coming to you today from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm back here from Nashville, where I was at our last episode. I'm joined by my friend, Beau up at the Jersey Shore. We're going to get into the gap match schedule, a couple other things happen in amateur golf. Beau, what's happening up there in Jersey?
Well, we finally have entered ball beating season up here. I just got done hitting a medium bucket of rocks over at Indian Springs, a little public range near us, and man, these balls were bad. So really no indication on how I was hitting it.
Balls are just diving and climbing and hooking and cutting in the same shot. It's like an air show out there. It's just really a complete waste of time.
Yeah, it's a tough way to start the season. Just, cold weather, maybe 60 degrees if you're lucky, and then, yeah, if those balls they don't have any softness to them. It's a hard welcome to the season.
It really is, and places like that really make me mad because their cheapness or their lack of quality is they're really just doing the game a disservice. We've been playing long enough to at least know that it's the balls doing that crazy stuff and it's not us. But there was like 70 high school kids out there that day, and most of those kids aren't going to know any better. And I just wanted to go up to them and be like, guys, it's not, these things have no dimples. You see these things, it doesn't matter what angle of attack you come in, where you hit it on the club face. This thing is not going to fly straight. It's not going to fly a normal height. Just ignore all results. Don't get discouraged. Come back another time, go to another range, hit some real balls, because it's physically impossible to hit good shots with these balls.
No, you can't. It's like the old Pennington balls we used to hit at Ryder. They're just they just fall out of the air.
Oh man, those were terrible. Yeah, it's just give the kids a chance, right?
But anyways, what are you up to? You said you're back in Phoenix now?
Not much. Back from Nashville, hanging out. My back and my arms have been giving me trouble, but for a few days I've been feeling good. I'm getting back out on the course today. First time in a couple weeks. I can't wait.
But before we get into the episode, I just wanted to go over a couple of housekeeping items for Gap and Jersey golfers. The Gap Mid-Am closes on the 30th, so that is coming up real soon. The Am opens on the 29th, so if you have a qualifying site you really want to get or anything like that, that is coming up very soon. Jersey and MGA qualifiers are open. Everything for the whole year is open. So if you want to play in those are starting to fill up a little bit as well. It happens fast. Get your cap active. Sign up for tournaments. The time's coming. It's right around the corner. So with that, we can get into our episode.
From what I understand, my years of being around the Gap and a little bit of research basically says these Gap matches have been going on since 1897, which is a long freaking time. There were just a couple of clubs, Marion, Philly Cricket, Philly Country Club, Aronimink, which was formerly Belmont Golf Association, blah, blah, blah. They basically set up these matches for basically just for fun. You assume it was a bunch of just affluent white rich dudes. But yeah, they put it all together for spirit, fellowship, and camaraderie. And the fact that that's still going more than 100 years later, 125 or whatever it is pretty cool. And all that, that stuff is still alive. The purpose and the reason it was created seems to still be persisting. So that's pretty cool. I guess you've been playing in them a long time, 16, 17 years or something like that. I guess, would you say, the spirit, fellowship, and camaraderie is kind of what it's about for you, and that's very much alive?
Yeah, I've been playing in these since I was a shaggy-haired stoner kid. But I think the surface level answer to your question is, hey, it's a day out with some buddies, playing some competitive golf, maybe have a couple beers, have a good dinner. Right, it just seems like a good way to spend your time, but I think there's so much more to it than that. And to me, when you look at what it does to the area, it's similar to a Phillies run or an Eagles run. It's a craze. Every mid-April to mid-May, it kind of takes over the golf scene in Philly. And you go to clubs, and this is the time of the year everyone's wondering, who's going to be on the first team? What's the cutoff going to be? And when the schedule comes out, everybody's pumped up. Oh, this is who we're playing. And then as the season goes on, everyone wants to know about the results. How'd you do? And it just seems like The clubs in this area just really embrace it from top to bottom, not just in the AA or A, and really all the way down to the lower divisions. Everybody's invested in this thing. Everybody enjoys it. And to get back to your question, I mean, what makes these matches so enjoyable and why we love these matches so much? I think it's a few things. I think obviously timing is one of them. These winters around here suck. We have such a desire to get back out into the golf course. And what better way to get those competitive juices flowing again with some match play versus, stroke play that might be a little more strenuous on your game. And speaking of match play, I think that's another big reason why we value these matches so much is guys like myself, I don't really get to play much match play, right? It's like this in the club championship, and that's pretty much it. I mean, match play is pretty much reserved for the elite level amateurs. In the area you think of, the Philly Am, the RJ Siegel, and the Jersey Mid-Am. I mean, that's reserved to like the top 50 or so guys. So if you're not in that top 50, you really don't get that much opportunity at one-on-one gross match play.
Yeah, match play is awesome, and it's cool that the season starts with that, and it would just be cool if there's more, I guess.
Yeah, I would certainly like more, but because of the scarcity of it, you really appreciate it that much more. But getting back to your point about the camaraderie and the history on how long these date back, I think those are the two reasons I love this stuff the most. I mean, to me, the camaraderie is so big because you get this. You travel around and playing qualifiers and tournaments, and competitive amateur golf is genuinely a very lonely scene. I mean, there's some days you'll spend like 9-10 hours just by yourself between the ride and the round, and yeah, I mean, when you play well, it feels worth it, and when you don't, you're just like, wow, it just feels like there's a lot better ways to spend my time than doing this.
Yeah, it's like, what the hell am I doing?
But I think most of the guys that play competitive amateur golf aren't loners, right? We want the social aspect. We want the camaraderie, and we really yearn for that. And the gap matches is something that gives that to us once a year. And with the history, look, I mean, you see it now with LIV and the PGA. It's like when there isn't history and there isn't tradition, then the tournaments or the events are deemed meaningless. And if the matches started 3 years ago, nobody would probably give a shit about these things. But the fact that they've been going on over 100 years, the fact that some of our fathers, our grandfathers, maybe even some of our great and great grandfathers, like you're saying, it went back to 1897. I'm sure there's somebody that can trace it back that far, and it's just it's really something special. It's something that we don't really get to experience in our world very much. Something that is this long-standing, is this consistent staple in our lives that, like, hey, no matter what happens, like life takes its turns, but come April, like you're going to be playing these matches for some team and somewhere, right? And that's kind of how it's been for me in my life. And yeah, as you get older, you really learn to appreciate things like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's it's like as old as Major League Baseball or whatever, right? It's not quite the same level of competition, but back then it was probably close. So I got the schedule in front of me. April 23rd, April 30th, May 7th. You got 3 weeks there in a row, end of April, early May. Weather's probably not going to be fantastic like usual. April 23rd, if you're heading up to the Poconos, it could be snowing. You never know. You got challenge matches on May 13th. That's the Saturday before Mother's Day. I mean, you're a family guy. You got a kid. A lot of people that play in these have even more complicated lives than you or I. How do you make it work? How do you get all the time? I mean, 3 weekends in a row, or potentially 4, including the Saturday before Mother's Day. Do you just go into Mother's Day in the doghouse? What's the deal?
Well, I mean, look, it's not easy being a partner of a Gap diehard. I mean, you're gonna have a lot of lonely Sundays. You're gonna be stuck with the kids. You're gonna have to take one for the team some days. I'm big on getting on board instantly, right? Like, it's almost like part of the onboarding process. It's like we going through deal breakers. It's like, yo, this is a deal breaker. If I can't play in these matches, like, we're good. I'm not gonna fight with you every spring for the next 20 years about these things. When the calendar rolls out, these are blackout dates. I don't really care if it's your mom's birthday, if Uncle Tony's in town, whatever it is, I'm not going. I'm playing these matches. Call me a dick, it's fine. I am being a dick, and I'll embrace that, for these 4 days. I always say you gotta sell them on the 4 days, right off the bat. You never sell them on the 3 Sundays, because then you got the fight with the challenge mats. You come right out, you tell them the 4 days. If you don't get challenged, then you got a free day to yourself. Do what you want.
That's so great. You could give it back to the fam, but maybe just go fishing. F it.
Yeah, I'm just speaking for the diehards. You always have those guys in your team who are like, I can make one match, but I gotta play home and I gotta get right out of there. I gotta get back, and it's like, you better play really good, because if not, there's just the guys you're not really thrilled to go to battle with. And then you'll have the guy who always has to deal with the anniversary every year, and it's like, dude, how stupid do you have to be to get married during Gap match season? That's like intro to being a Gap golfer 101. Come on, man. That's just such a rookie mistake. I don't care what kind of deal the wedding venue's offering. You can't be short-sighted. Just pay the price. Get married in June. It'll have a much better chance at surviving. And when I was with my ex, and I'm single now, I probably should take a page out of the guy who plays one match a year. His book, probably why I'm single. But I told her, look, I could always play for Sakima, and you'd be rolling meatballs all weekend to bring up to 50 drunk guys on Sunday. Right? So just be grateful that I'm playing for a team that has a kitchen that feeds us, and you can take the day off and have fun with your girlfriends or whatever.
Wait, hang on. So there's no chef at this place? What's the deal? You cook for yourself?
Yeah, so Sakima's this club in South Jersey, and they don't really have like a restaurant or anything there. I think they just have like dogs and chips. So for the Gap matches, the wives will come, get all the crock pots together and come and feed the gang, which is, obviously super nice. Not it's really a nice gesture. But man, could you imagine having to sell that one?
It's an impossible sell for most guys. I don't know. Hopefully you got a really lovely lady, but I guess the Sakima guys do. That's wild. Wait, that's the place that also where the members mow the course, right? There's like no grounds crew. The members just essentially do everything.
That's the word. I've heard that the guys, I guess they get up in the morning and cut the course and then go play it. I don't know. I guess you got to get up really early to do that. I've heard that if they put like a front pin, sometimes they'll just cut like the front of the green. I don't know how true this is, but this is what I've heard. It wouldn't surprise me though. Wild things happen in South Jersey.
Yeah, I guess they do. Well, all right, let's get into this Gap match stuff. So lay of the land here. You got a bunch of divisions. Top group is AA. Can you kind of walk me through some of the top teams, kind of what the landscape has looked like over the last few years, and kind of where it's headed?
Yeah, so it probably makes sense to just do a complete rundown of the AA teams. Maybe we'll do it section by section and do it that way. So I got it pulled up right now. Section 1, you got LuLu, White Marsh, Tavistock, and Huntsville. This is probably the easiest section to predict. LuLu's a top 2 or 3 team, I would think, in anybody's book. The other teams just really don't have the firepower to keep up with them. White Marsh last year was their first year in AA. Tavistock's been around for a bit.
But their core group of players they have over there probably are a bit past their prime. Still good players, but just not the same that they were, 10 years ago.
And Huntsville, been in AA for a while, but never
really makes much noise.
It's always just kind of floats around in that 3 to 4 spot. Like I said, I just don't think any of those teams have the firepower to keep up with LuLu. In Section 2, you got Philly Cricket 1, Lanark 1, Cricket 2, and LuLu 2. So Cricket and LuLu have so many good players that they've actually been able to get 2 teams in AA, which is a pretty unbelievable feat. With that being said, this division I think is really tough to predict because Cricket Club is another team that, like I said, top 2 or 3 team in most people's books. They've been dominant for the last 11 or 12 years. I'll get into some of the things, some of the numbers that they've produced shortly. But then you get into the rest of the division, I look at Cricket 2, right, who to make Cricket's even second team, you got to have a +1 or 2 handicap. So you're thinking both teams have, everyone's +1 or +2 or better. When they play each other, they're playing their home course. I'm sure they all know each other's games pretty well. So I like to think, obviously Cricket Club 1's going to be the favorite there, but you'd like to think that Cricket 2 could potentially beat them. And then you look at LuLu 2, another team that, I would think would have mostly, +1 scratch handicap guys, going to be a, formidable team. And then Lanark is just that pesky team, and they almost never have to challenge down. Once in a while, they sneak into the playoffs. They kind of sit in that 2 to 3 range a lot, but they can beat anybody on any given day. They have the best lineup of scratch to 2 handicaps in the section. You look at their score sheets, you're not seeing +4s and 5s. You're seeing more normal handicaps, but they can compete with anybody. So I like Cricket 1 there, but it's not a complete show-in. I think there's a chance that any 3 of those teams on the right day maybe have a chance. Section 3, Marion, Glenmora, North Hills, and 1912. Another tough one to predict. The only team I would pretty much eliminate, I would say, would be North Hills. And then I think this is their first year in AA. Marion and Glenmara have been in there for a while. 1912 is new, but they have some really good players. They're on the rise. I'd say Marion, Glenmara, or 1912 have a shot here, but I would probably, if I had to pick a team, I'm going to go Glenmara. And then Section 4 is Huntington, Little Mill, Aronimink, and Ledrock. This is one I think that's pretty easy to pick. I mean, I got to go with Huntington Valley. I think
they're a top 3 team in Gap. They won the whole thing in 2019. I got it like Tier 1A, Cricket Club and LuLu, and close behind in Tier 1B, Huntington.
Little Mills had some great years and great teams in the past, 10 years or so, but they just don't have the firepower that they once had. They've lost some guys and just not the same team that they were 6 or 7 years ago. And I don't think Aronimink or Ledrock have the team to beat Huntington.
But look, all this is a bit speculative. This is based upon last year's rosters, and you never know the availability of guys or what's going on. But for the most part, especially in that AA, the teams stay relatively consistent.
All right. So here's the big question: if you had to make a pick for 2023, which team is gonna win it all?
So before I get into my pick, I want to do a little gap history here and specifically focus on what Philly Cricket has been able to accomplish in the last decade or so. So from 2011 to 2018, 8-year period, they were 23-0-1 regular season, did not lose a single match, including the 22-match win streak.
Made the playoffs 7 times, 4 championships.
They were dominant. I mean, they were the team. It was something we've never really seen in modern day Gap, this level of dominance, and it kind of seemed like it would never end, right? They were that good. And then here comes LuLu, and story has it that John Rust, I think, took over the ownership around 2015. He's an ex-professional. He played at Auburn with Jason Duffner. He got his AM status back. He got involved in the ownership, and they started assembling essentially a super team to compete with Cricket Club. And they start getting these guys. They move up the ranks. They make it to AA in 2018. And in 2019, they are in Philly Cricket Club's division. They both win their first 2 matches. So they have this week 3 showdown. They finally get their chance to prove themselves after waiting 3 or 4 years from the time they started this thing. And they ended up beating Cricket Club handily. It wasn't even close. They beat him by 11 points. Truly a statement win. Like, hey, there's a new contender in town. So that win propelled them into the playoffs.
They did not end up winning. Huntington won it that year. The next year was COVID, and then in 2021, LuLu comes right back and wins their division 3-0, goes to the playoffs again, and setting up another showdown with Cricket Club. And they showed that 2019 was not a fluke. They end up winning the championship that year, taking out Cricket Club. And now it seems like, okay, LuLu is the new team, right? LuLu is the new Cricket Club. And that was kind of the talk around Gap. Like, Cricket Club's run may be over. 2022 comes along. Both LuLu and Cricket, to nobody's surprise, win their division, go back to the playoffs. Cricket Club says not so fast. They win 2022. And now you're left with the question that you're asking me. Who is the best team? Who's going to win it in 23? With all that being said, I'm going with LuLu. I just think they're a little bit better up top than Cricket Club. But at the same time, it's probably about as close to 50-50 as you're going to get. I mean, maybe in a head-to-head matchup, LuLu is like minus 130 or something, right? They might win 52 out of 100 times. And one stat that I found interesting was that in the last 2 years that they've both met in the playoffs, LuLu has taken 12 out of 18 points on the road in those playoff matches against Cricket Club. So clearly they have some guys that have some comfort there.
Yeah, clearly. Okay, so who's on that LuLu squad that makes them your top pick? I know they got Mike Brown, obviously, but as you go down the list, who else are we looking at?
Yeah, so they got Mike Brown, like you said. They have John Rusk, who I mentioned before, really good player. Jack Melville's been good for them, looking at some recent history. Jim Sullivan Jr. was a longtime Huntington Valley guy, one of the best players in the area in the 90s, and I think he took some time off and came back recently, and he's been playing well. Scott McLaughlin was their leading points getter last year. He also won the Marston Cup, which is one of the bigger senior events in the area. PJ Arsino has been a good player in this section for quite some time. You got Glenn Smaraglio. He's won a couple majors in the past. He was a longtime Yardley guy. I've heard they used to call him the junkyard dog out there, and that's a nickname that seems solely reserved for a winner. Not many lifetime losers going out there by the JYD nickname.
No, there's not. Have you ever had a nickname?
Nothing for me. No, I feel like my name is a nickname, so there's really not a whole lot you can do with it.
Yeah, true. I knew Glenn from Mercer Oaks. I guess he was over there when I was there in college and kept my handicap there. He had me play in this one Gap team event one time, and I got just totally torched by Kyle Stravinsky from Huntington Valley. It was just brutal.
I remember you called me right after that, and you said like I played this kid and he just completely thrashed me. And I was like, and then once you said it was Stravinsky, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah. I think Glenn might have just called you up to get sacrificed.
Seriously, that's what it felt like. It's like, yeah, nobody wants to play him, so we're just gonna plug this Cole guy in, just write the point off.
Yeah, just needed a warm body.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that was the Gap Team Championship. They since did away with that. It was a cool event. Because you guys played like better ball in the afternoon or something, right? Or is it better ball morning?
In the afternoon, yeah. But yeah, it was like 36.
You got walloped in that too?
Oh yeah, totally smushed. Me and Jimmy just got wrecked.
Who'd you play? You see you played Stravinsky and who else in the afternoon?
Ben Cooley. Those guys are good.
Oh yeah. Yeah, those guys are just better than you guys.
Just a lot better.
A lot better. Not many simulations being run on that and having you guys coming out on top, that's for sure.
Exactly, yeah, you run that 1,000 times. I don't know if you really get one.
Barring injury.
Right.
All right. So before we move on from the subject of Gap matches, I want to know, in terms of individual players, is there anyone who through the years has like dominated, like been just like an Ian Poulter that you just is like that guy that you just hope you don't want to face, or just has a ridiculous record or anything like that?
So Gap does have this information out there, and it's a bit hard to sort through because you kind of have to go player by player. There's not like one database that has everything and you can like filter by win percentage, but from my research and just some guys that I follow and over the years, there's one guy that has, I would put this up there as one of the greatest feats in at least modern day Gap, right? In the since say post 2000, since I've been following it. When I think of great feats, I think of Chris Alt, the 63 he shot at Rolling Green in the USM qualifier in the early 2000s. Recently, Jeremy Wall's back-to-back AMs in 16 and 17. What Mike Brown was able to do, winning the Jersey AM, PAM, and Delaware AM all at once, and then winning the Gap AM 2 years later or a year later. But yeah, Mike Hyland, Mike's, he's won, I think, the AM once or twice actually, the Jersey Mid-Am. He's won the Gap Mid-Am. He's a well-known player in the area. He has done something pretty incredible in Gap matches. So his first 14 Gap matches, he was 14-0. Not only did he win every single one, but he never lost a 9. So, 14, 2 9s, 28 9s. He played 28 9s against some of the best players in Gap, right? Little Mill's been in AA. I'm looking at his score sheets now. I see Nate Sutherland's name. I see Rob Robertson, Andrew Mason. These are some of the best players in the section. And he never even lost a 9.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. I mean, that's just too big a sample size to not have lost 9 holes.
And to make it even more impressive, he played 12 out of 14 of those matches on the road. Just really hard to fathom, especially for a guy like me who's got 18 losses and counting.
Yeah, if all of these are on the road, they're all against AA teams. They're going to be against some of the best players in the section. On the road, that's insane. And just to never lose.
Yeah, something really cool and probably not widely known in the section. But Mike took some time off from 18 to 22. I know he's battling some back issues. And he finally did have his first loss last year at home to Michael Davis, who's another great player in the area. But yeah, he's still undefeated on the roads. So maybe we'll keep an eye on that and see how long he can keep that going for.
That's nuts. You did rattle off a bunch of insane accomplishments. That the back-to-back AMs, to me, maybe takes the cake. It doesn't matter, I guess, which, but that one's insane just because of the format of, it's 4 or 5 rounds of match play and, to win whatever that is, 8 or 10 matches in a row, against good players, high stakes, heat of the summer. And I think, legend has it, he carried his own bag the whole time, too, which is just absurd.
I remember hearing that as well. You can kind of see it if a guy's dead straight, hits every fairway, but I've heard he hits it all over the yard and just has an unbelievable short game and putts as well as anyone. But yeah, if that's true, then it sounds like Jerry might even have got some extra steps in that week.
That's amazing. So cool. Anyone else worth mentioning?
Another one is the late Robert Galbraith Jr. He was a dominant golfer in the early mid-2000s. I grew up competing against him in some of the local events. And I use the term competing very loosely. It was more just playing in the same events that he was playing in. He was the guy, man. He was really really dominated the scene around here. He compiled a record of 23-2-2 over an 11-year period. He won 4 out of 5 Gap Junior Boys Championships, which you need to win 4 matches to win the whole thing. So he was 16-0 in those, and obviously 16-0 and 23-2-2. You kind of see that this kid was a really good player and especially a good match play player.
That was really cool. I mean, not every great player is a great match play player.
Right. I mean, just ask Keegan Bradley. He hasn't won a match in that Dell match play in over 16 matches. But before we move on, another really impressive record I wanted to mention was Sean Semenitz, cricket club guy, big part of their success. He's got a record of 27-4-2.
All right. Well, that's pretty cool. We've got a couple legends there in the Gap. I mean, you got 16 wins, and I want to pump you up and talk about the good times, but we know the losses are more fun to talk about. So, what's your worst gap match loss?
Well, when you have 18 losses, you're constantly finding new ways to lose, and I found one a couple years ago. So we headed up to Hawk Point up in North Jersey, which I think it was up where you were. I don't know if you're familiar.
Yeah, I worked there. It's the range rat.
Huh. I didn't realize that. Yeah, that's an underratedly tough job picking the range. I did it. I hated it.
At a private club that's not that busy, it's nice. I took so many naps on the back of the range.
I did it at Little Mill, and I would just do it once a week. They would bring me in every Saturday to pick it. They'd wait the whole week. Nobody would touch it. And I'd come in, there'd be a million balls everywhere. I literally would drive the cart for like 5 yards and it would fill up, and I had to wash them. It was just a nightmare. Really just a shit job. I think I did it like 4 times and quit. I was getting like $7 an hour. Anyways, so we go up there and they're new to Gap, and I'll tell you why they're new to Gap, because they made a rookie mistake and booked their ABCD scramble the same day as our gap match, so we didn't go off till like 2 or 2:30. We had to wait for that to be done. Anyway, we're on the putting green. The guy I'm supposed to play has a family emergency. Someone had like a heart attack or something. He had a bolt, and now they're trying to pluck somebody out of that ABCD scramble to play me. And they end up grabbing this guy. He was just completely wasted, and I don't know what his handicap is, right? He could be anything. He could be a 20, whatever, and didn't look like a player, right? Long story short, I'm 2 up through 2. I'm just going to crush this guy, whatever. And then he made some clutch putts on like the front 9 to win a couple holes. And next thing you know, I'm even, and I'm like, oh man, the alarm bell started going off. I'm like, I'm in trouble. I just knew it. I'm like, I broke the cardinal rule of not taking your opponent for granted, and it's stuff we're taught since we're little kids. It's like the moral of children's books, right? It's been drilled in our head, and I'm like 31 years old, and I still haven't learned. Anyways, I start getting desperate. I'm like, all right, I knew I was in trouble, and I'm just thinking of anything I can just say to this guy. I just start telling him about how like serious these matches are, and because he didn't really know what was going on. He wasn't even giving putts at first. The guy's like, his partner's like, you got to give him that. It's an inch putt, right? He didn't even really know what was going on, and I'm playing with Zach Arsenault, who played in the USM the year before, so I'm trying to I brought that up casually to maybe thinking that could spook him a bit. Maybe that will get his heart pumping a little bit harder, but none of it worked. He played even par coming in. I lost on 17. Another lesson learned, but it was funny because everybody knew that they got this guy out of the scramble, and when he beat me, it was funny. It was just pretty demoralizing.
That's a tough one. That is a story. Okay. Thanks for indulging us. I think that kind of concludes at least the gap match preview. Obviously, we'll be following throughout the season. We'll loop back in a couple weeks after the first matches and maybe a little more hype. But, if you're listening, if you're a Gap member, make sure your cap is active by April 1st. You got to be on the April 1st update to compete. So that is coming up very soon. As of this recording, it is March 23rd, so you've got about a week. So get it done. A couple happenings in the greater golf world. They're talking about rolling back these balls, maybe for a couple tournaments for pros. They're going to play some balls that fly 15% less or something. What do you make of that?
I'm not a big fan of it. I mean, look, if they did it for a couple tournaments, or they just did it for a couple majors, I mean, it's not the end of the world. But I think anything more than that, it's a pretty ridiculous thing. Just because there's so many other things you can do. I mean, I don't see why they can't just grow the rough up and tighten the fairways and firm the greens up, so you have to hit the fairways and get back to putting a premium on accuracy. Another reason I don't like it is I really think it's going to eliminate, like, any guy on tour right now that hits at 290 or 295 and then you bring him down to like 275 or 270, anybody in that range just has no chance of competing. Right, like you can't play modern day courses hitting the ball 270 and expect to win at the highest level.
And I just find it funny how a lot of the longer guys are the ones coming out complaining, and it's like, you guys will be fine. You could still play these courses hitting at 300, 310. Like, you don't need to hit at 340. And then you got guys like Tiger and Jack coming out saying they support it, and they're golf architects, and they're like, well, what are we going to have to do to make courses 8,000 yards? And my response to that is like, no, just learn how to design better short par 4s and better short par 3s, which, in my opinion, are the hardest holes to design. I think there's a fine line between a really good short 4 and a really bad one. It could be as simple as a bunker or whatever, but there's plenty of data points to show that we don't need holes to be long to be hard. And also, if you see holes like, you look at like Aaron Hills a few years back at the U.S. Open, it doesn't matter if holes are 510 or 520 par 4s. If it's firm and fast and the guys are, longer guys are hitting at 350, 360, they're still going to be hitting wedges into those holes. If there's no premium on accuracy, then it doesn't really matter how long the holes are. The guys are still going to rip it apart. So, I don't know. Those are my thoughts. You got anything?
Yeah, no, not really. It feels like a little too much tinkering for me. I think, they have mechanisms to change results, like you mentioned, like growing up the rough and shrinking the fairways and firming up the greens. And that's all normal stuff. Like, golf courses are subject to change and they can be set up the way you want. But I think changing the balls is maybe just a little too far on that, tinkering level. But I don't know. It likely almost definitely won't affect the amateur game. And, that's where we stay. That's where we live. That's our lane. That's what our podcast is about. So, I don't know. But for the pros, I think it's probably a little silly.
Yeah, it seems most people are aligned with us, but it doesn't really matter what we think, right? So we'll see how this thing unfolds.
They said just recently that the U.S. Am qualifying is going to be more similar to U.S. Open qualifying, so they're going to do away with that 36-hole day, and it's going to be more like a 18 one day, 18 another. You a fan of that?
You're the one falling apart a little bit over there. I'm assuming you really liked hearing this.
Love it. The 36 is grueling. Usually for the time of year, too, that it is. It's like midsummer, so that 36 on a midsummer's day is just really exhausting. I mean, obviously, if you do qualify for the event and you're there in match play, you're going to be playing, 36 holes of match play here and there, and that's part of the event. It's an endurance contest as much as a golf physical sport contest. But just for just getting in is winning for a lot of guys, right? Just to play in a US Am, that's like a lifetime goal for me. If I play in one US Am, I'd be like, man, I had a good career, And I think that makes it a little more possible for me and people like me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, the endurance aspect of it, you'd really like to see it just focused on golf as much as possible and leave the endurance out of it. I mean, it's so much of an advantage being 22 versus 40 and something like that. And because of that, I think, too, it caused issues because, if you're not playing well, why would you go to another course for the second 18 in that heat? And, I mean, it just led to so many people withdrawing. Then it turns into a logistical nightmare because if you have two guys withdraw in a group and you got to have markers. And, yeah, I think it makes complete logical sense to do what they're doing.
I like it. I'm a fan. Cool. Well, deadline's coming up. Get on the internets, get your registrations done, do your things, do the stuff, sign up, play in the events. There's a lot going on, a lot to be excited about. Thank you for listening to Slammers Weekly. We're going to keep it rolling here. Season's coming up soon. Episodes coming out weekly or close enough to it. And thank you for listening. For my friend Beau, I am Cole Clark. Thank you for listening to Slammers Weekly.